Hi, y'all. How we doing? This is your host, Rob Napoli. If you're a podcast junkie like me and you're looking for a new podcast to add to your feed, you might want to check out the Success Fundamentals podcast with my guys, Brian Goldstack and Chris Sykes, where they drop weekly episodes that cover all things success and growth. You can find the Success Fundamentals podcast on whatever platforms you enjoy listening to this podcast, The Bare Necessities. Hey y'all, how we doing? Shout out once again to Bare Nation for tuning in to another episode of the Bare Necessities podcast. I am your host, Rob Napoli. The Bare Necessities is a podcast where we sit down with entrepreneurs, ecosystem partners, and innovation folks to talk about what it takes and means to launch, create, and scale business across the world. We talk about the journey and the challenges of being entrepreneur-minded and how that translates into your journey, giving you the tools and knowledge to overcome challenges that you may be facing in your life's journey. The Bare Necessities is part of the Rise Up Media family, and we thank you for tuning in. Now, let's get into the show. And so, but I think this is interesting in the fact that, one, everyone out there listening should go listen to Live from Tomorrow. It was amazingly done. I loved it. It made me laugh, it made me think, and it really made me appreciate the power of storytelling. And people know I'm a storyteller. Like, that's what I do, and I love that. And so that's what I loved about the podcast. And even though it became this thing that you weren't expecting it to, it opened up so many doors in a way that between that, the IBM blockchain, Pulse, like all these things open up a lot of doors for you and really kind of allowed you to grow in ways that maybe you didn't realize. And it's okay that you got tired. I think the fact that you say that is self-awareness, and people need to realize that it's tough sometimes grinding out, and it's okay to end something and see something and say I got tired. We feel like we always have to be on all the time and keep creating and do these things, and especially in a world of TikTok and you got to stay relevant. It's like, no, like you can create something good and be happy with what it was, and let it be what it is. And that's okay to move on.
And I think also like TikTok's a really good example of that. So like, as we've been talking, we're talking about a long time. Like we're talking about like 10, 12, 13 years of career at this point, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're not, like we're not young. We're not old, but like we're not young. And so the other thought that I was having during the second season of Live from Tomorrow was the earnestness of this show and the sort of, I played a guy with my name, like to make the hosting work. But like when I talked like that guy, like my voice was always going up. Like I was like, it was a cartoon character,
Yeah.
And so the real challenge that I had there was thinking like, well, I don't think like a grown up does this. Like this felt like the show felt too zany at that point for what I was thinking about in my life.
Yeah.
And there was a moment, this is like a true story. So a friend of mine, I live near a beach, and I drove, this is like pre-vaccine. This is a Wednesday in early January of 2021. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting on the beach. My friend tells me this horrible story, this really sad story in his life. I'm miserable. I hadn't slept. I'm doing an edit on Live from Tomorrow, and I had just hosted this panel. Like that's obviously what pays me. I'm working on this documentary with IBM at the same time, an audio documentary on the history of quantum computing. So my mind was a bit scattered in the 3 different projects I'm doing that day. Hadn't seen anybody in a year. I mean, we all remember what that time was like. My sister texts me, and she's like, "People are attacking the Capitol." And I was like, "What?" And she goes, "No, people are attacking the Capitol in Washington. You should go home and watch it if you're not home." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Yeah, right. This is just another protest. Everyone's angry. I'm tired."
Yeah.
I go home and I know this is going to sound ridiculous on some level, or like a movie or something, but I actually at that exact moment thought, once I did go home and saw what she was talking about, I mean, I could almost cry thinking about it. Like my feeling was, if this is what's happening in society, I have to change what I do. Mm-hmm. I have to do something that is more contributive.
Yeah.
I think that the other thing that happens when you're sort of an entrepreneur is you're so focused on, I mean, right, what I just described was I had 3 client deadlines and that was my focus. That's what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
I get it. You have to make money. But the other thing that was happening was like, it looked like the social fabric was coming undone.
Yeah.
For the first time since Washington's inauguration, we did not have a peaceful transition of power. I mean, this was a seismic, traumatic thing.
Yeah.
And if people in your family who are, veterans, like there are folks who have given themselves to service, and this was just thumbing the nose at all of that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what else can I do? Do you know what I mean? Like what? Yeah. Like it was. I didn't have an answer, but like, what else can I do? So it's weird to say that out loud. That like the insurrection made me think that because I wasn't in DC, I was just watching it on TV, but I was in such a fragile state, as I think many people were.
Yeah.
Given the year we'd had leading up to it and that experience, and it felt, and this is a weird thing to say because I know it's become like so many other things, sort of partisan, but it felt apolitical. Like it didn't feel to me. Like let me put it this way. None of my right-leaning friends thought this was a cool thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't a situation where deep down people were like, well, I get it. I sometimes you just want to rise up. No, sorry, I don't mean to say rise up, but we're very different on the show. But the anguish I felt genuinely, and this is a weird thing to say because I'm a political person in my personal life, but I'm in business. I mean, I don't. I have these discussions sometimes at work when other people do, especially if it's a younger crowd and they're smart.
Yeah.
But for me, it was a very big turning point. And so I looked ahead at the next 3 months and I had to finish Live from Tomorrow Season 2 and this quantum documentary. And that was it. And I thought if I spend the next 6 months figuring out what's next with the runway I have, what will that be and what will make me happy? Yeah. And it has to be something more tied to leadership and more tied to social impact. I would honestly even say social awareness. I mean, for people out there who are considering entrepreneurship but haven't ever been around a startup founder, like they're pretty unaware. The focus is on the product, the problem you're solving, the problem you're solving, the problem you're solving. And I'd also been, the previous semester in the fall of 2020, I'd been asked to become what's known as a specialist, which means that I facilitated an intensive, which is a sort of course, but very, very much not an actual official course, because it's at this really cool innovation hub on the Yale campus called the Tsai Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale. So named for Joe Tsai, co-founder of Alibaba, who'd gone to Yale and donated to create this incredible center. Amazing staff, brilliant people. Their director of network and partnerships brought me in to create this intensive called Innovation from the Inside. And so I also started to see students, both undergrad and graduates, from all over the world, literally all over the world, because it was all on Zoom. Like it wasn't like we were all in a classroom. They were all in their own cities and their own places of residence. There was an opportunity to like shut up and learn about things again. Like teaching is learning, the same way leadership is followership.
Yeah.
And so that also happened to me. So like deep down, I'd love to make a Live from Tomorrow Season 3, or when it's safe to do shows again, like we'll probably do them. I'm not saying no, but like I felt, and maybe this is, I don't know how much of this you'll use or whatever, but the thing that I said to my wife recently was it felt like for so much of my life, I thought like, yes, I care about these issues, but someone will figure this out.
Yeah.
I mean, right, we all have imposter syndrome. Like someone's going to figure out how to preserve liberal democracy. Somebody's going to figure out how to, you know what I mean? How to make sure people get along again.
Yeah.
But you know what, dude? Like no one did.
Yeah.
And so it becomes incumbent upon us to try to figure that out. And that was, so that was the big turning point for me. So some people have asked me, like, did you sell the business or what happened? Or do you want to, when's the next season? And the truth is I just got really sad.
Yeah.
Everything's like, I just fell into a hole and couldn't get out.
And that's, I think that's okay. And that, and it happens to a lot of us. And, one of the things that I've always talked to people about, and as I continue to build my business and figure out what the continuation of it is that I talk to people about, when we talk about change, is that not any one person, most of us can change the whole world, but we can create and do things to change our sphere of influence and create opportunity and programs and innovation and thinking and projects and things that make an impact in our ecosystem. If we can do it within our ecosystem, then that ripples effects out. And so thinking about all that and actually sharing that story reminds me of how I felt and kind of what those conversations needed to look like next, and how each one of us can sit on the sidelines and think somebody else is going to do it. But the daunting task of, is it going to be me to do it? Well, think about what can you do in your sphere of influence today to create small incremental changes and continue to build and create progress. And that's what I think is really important. And as you kind of had this opportunity to go through that and see that, it gave you perspective on, something that was really awesome. And I think was something that you can look back on, like, that was fun. And I'm really excited to do that. And maybe I'll do it again, but it's okay that I don't, because these other things have kind of happened. And, the Size Center of Innovation Thinking has been something that opened up a lot of doors for you, which actually opened up the door to where you are currently. Right. Yep. And so your current role was introduced to you from this opportunity. And so when we talk about these things, that we need to allow for life to happen and take opportunity and chase it down, not knowing what you're going to be able to accomplish, but being excited about the opportunity to go try and accomplish that. Right. And to try to go dream for something bigger and swing for something bigger to be a part of that in whatever shape or form that looks like. And that's what I think so much about entrepreneurship is when you actually take that step back and stop thinking about problem solution, about what the bigger dream is, that, and as you shared with me, that gets exciting. And I think that's something that being vulnerable about and sharing that story is, for so many people, they go down a path. And with Half Day Group, we were successfully acquired this year. And my co-founder and I Phil had a conversation of like, is this what we want to continue to build? Or is there somebody better to build this and us to focus on other things? And that's what happened at the end of 2020 into 2021. And that's okay. That's meant to be. And that's what life is all about, taking risks and opportunity. And we talked about risk so much earlier. So I appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable there, because so many of us have gone through tons of feelings and ranges of emotions over the last couple of years, and figuring out, where do we step up and step in, or where can we make an impact, and how can we do something in our current sphere of influence?
I was talking about selling the business, and maybe one of the products might get sold. It's a similar thing, because I think there's things to scale. But the bottom line, when I hear in that Half Day story too, it's so interesting, is that it's not like, I would not become an especially wealthy person from selling an individual project at this point. What's going to be interesting about, if I ever go down that road with something like LFT, it's like, it's because someone could do it better. It's exactly what you said. Like, where your strengths are at the end of 2020, 2021, what you can do. And I also think that one of the real gifts that I have been given in terms of my own career, I'd say it's a gift. That might be cliche, but it's a gift, is having been able to meet so many smart people, passionate people, driven people. And so when I'm watching the news, or, again, as I said, we're recording this on a very dark day in geopolitical history. You often feel helpless. I mean, the first instinct is usually helplessness in a sort of information heavy moment, right? You're getting news flashes, news bulletins, emails. Everybody's trying to monopolize your attention.
Yeah.
But they're monopolizing your attention more or less to tell you that you're really screwed. Things are really dark. And I then have to remind myself that it is always darkest before the dawn. That in my own life, I have had moments where I've been so low, because I do take these big risks. You know what I mean? If I was a, deliverer of milk, I'd probably have less risk. Like, maybe there'd be some supply chain issues right now, but generally speaking, I make sure that the milk gets to your door. Because I've had a less linear path, as have my closest friends and colleagues. I mean, I really want to hit that home. Like, I do think the regionality thing is real, but like, if you came of age in New York and you were in startups, you had like 10 jobs. LFT Media, we talked about, I did that for 4.5 years. That's the longest of anyone I know who's had a job practically.
Yeah.
So even though I had different client engagements, it was the same job. I had one job for 4.5 years. It was shocking. Barclays was the same job for 2 years. So it's a shocking thing. So what I tend to think about when I see the big bad stories and get most sad is I do think, well, I know people. Like, people aren't this. The people are very interesting and they're full of surprises and they want mostly the same things. Most people want to feel loved, give love, make sure their family's safe, and not have to worry all the time. And any societal solution that I see for any problem, it should be addressing one of those things. Like, it is weird that we don't guarantee people a safe and affordable life, at least, in the United States right now. I mean, many parts of the world are struggling with that too, but the United States is specifically struggling with that idea.
Yeah.
And it's interesting now that I'm working with just a terrific team based out of Copenhagen. Their issues, and there are real issues that they're dealing with socially, are just very different from ours.
Yeah.
As you know, and I'm not one of these, young coastal elite liberal, whatever, blah, 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 although I am technically running around talking about the Nordic model. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's a different appreciation in different parts of the world for different aspects of life, right? Whether it's parental leave or healthcare, these basic things. And I think that where I am most excited to see innovation is in recognizing societal problems and trying to build for those rather than like sort of market problems.
Yeah.
And my hope is that as technologists and as technology enthusiasts, we think about the societal problems and the societal solutions rather than the market problems and market solutions. Like real savvy executives can handle the market problem market solution ratio. That is a real gift and a real skill. But it's harder to, if your job is just to sort of, make money, it's harder to think 5-10 years down the line. But it is the job of the technologist, of the innovator, of the chairman, if not the CEO. The higher up you are, you should sort of be dreaming bigger and bigger in theory. And I think in practice it will happen. But like, we need to be the people that get them there. So it's hard work. So I think the social problem, social solution, or what I say, societal problem, societal solution, that's the bigger. I think that's the bigger opportunity. And on my darkest moments, I wonder, is anyone really doing that? And in my brightest, most optimistic moments, I think, oh yeah, I am. Oh yeah, so-and-so is. Oh yeah, Rob is, Like, you are creating a communications outlet for people who suffer from all the things that entrepreneurs suffer from: profound anxiety, loneliness, imposter syndrome, fear of losing it all the things that we all suffer from. And so you're putting good into, like, real good into the world, but also building a commercial business. You're not a nonprofit. This isn't a charity. This is a business. Yeah. And that excites me the most, like genuinely the most. So that's why I made the change in career I made. That's why, like, I might sell a project at some point, but the truth is I was just perfectly happy to end it where it was. It was successful and I was proud of it. But it's also, I think, to your earlier question about like, where does entrepreneurship end and innovation begin? I think entrepreneurship is, one avenue of innovation. We've discussed several over the last hour and 10 minutes or so. Innovation is, we say this a lot in the work I do in the intensive, and this is something that the folks at SciCity say, which is that innovation is a practice. And that also changed the way I think. Innovation is a practice. I think entrepreneurship is a calling. I think entrepreneurship is a skill. I think entrepreneurship is an identity. But I think innovation is a practice. And I am proud to be an innovation practitioner, even though as of the last 2 months, I am no longer an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I think that's a really interesting point, because I think if we really want, and we think that, entrepreneurship is sometimes synonymous with innovation, that to be an entrepreneur, you're innovating, and it's not true, right? You could be an entrepreneur and not innovate. You could be an entrepreneur and be derivative. And so I love this idea of innovation as a practice, and innovation happens when you dream. And you said this pre-show, and it's something you share a lot. I want you to kind of expand upon it, right? Of dreams greater than problems. And I think that's where innovation happens.
Yeah. So I am now working. So I'm the managing director of IDENIA US, and IDENIA it's a management consultancy, but it was based around this terrific book that I highly recommend everybody read called Dreams and Details, written by Jim Snabe and Mikhail Trolle. And Jim was the CEO of SAP, and until last week was the chairman of Maersk, and is still the chairman of Siemens. and Mikhail was the CEO of Volleyball Denmark, and they brought their respective experiences in sports and in business to create a leadership methodology, a model. That's what Dreams in Details is. That's what the book is. The methodology is called Dreams in Details. And in the when was it? Fall of 2020, my first semester working on the Innovation from the Inside Intensive, my collaborator, my co-facilitator brought the book to my attention. And I sort of fell in love with it. And I stayed in touch with the IDENIA team, particularly Mikhail, the CEO. And we saw an opportunity to work together to build this business in the U.S. But the way we're approaching it in the U.S., frankly, we've really hit the ground running. We have a summit coming up this May 5th and 6th. I'd love to share that with your listeners when this goes live. We can put a little blurb in there.
Yeah.
The inaugural Dreams in Details Summit. It's going to be great. That's my plug. I hope I sound excited because I am. It's going to be great.
I'm excited for you.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really cool. And in a nice full circle journey, we've partnered with Rise Created by Barclays. So Barclays, Rise Created by Barclays is our partner. So it's a wonderful, sort of as a proud alum going back to it's really exciting. But I share all that to say that the methodology made me think about something I never thought about before. I think a lot about management, often how I could have been a better manager or worse. I mean, never think worse manager, always a better manager. I stink at X, or my own manager stunk at Y. How do I get that right? And this was a methodology that taught me that there's a major distinction between being led and being managed. It taught me how to unleash human potential. It put into context, into real historical context, the opportunity we have here living through the fourth industrial revolution, which Jim and Mikhail also refer to as the first digital revolution. And you see yourself as a leader in a greater context as a consequence. Yeah. And so part of the work is workshops and consulting and doing the sort of larger marketing events like keynotes and summits and so on. But part of it is trying to popularize something that I think is really tricky, which is a leadership methodology. Again, we think about management, we don't think about being led. Yeah. And so for all of my, frankly, addiction to the lean startup methodology, which like so many of us sort of powered us through the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
I was focused on the problem. That's the thing you were taught to do. What's the problem? What are you solving?
Yeah.
What's your customer segment? Go build something for them. It wasn't, what's your dream? What are you dreaming about? What's the dream? And that changed my brain entirely. Because, when you dream about a carbon neutral world. You dream about a world where your children are healthy and can go to school and can fall in love and can be safe.
Yeah.
You don't dream about making something that hits at exactly the right spot for exactly that person. And then what kind of SEO hacks you can bake in so that people are finding you quickly. That's not a dream. Yeah. That's a solution. Yeah. And that idea, the twin ideas, I should say, that what's missing is not more innovation, it's innovative leadership. That what we've been doing is not dreaming but solving a problem, and it is incumbent upon us to dream, right? To look away from solving problems towards dreaming big, chasing ambitious dreams. Those twin ideas changed me, and so I'm, as you can tell, excited about the work. But also, it's one of those rare moments where like job and person found each other. Yeah, because I started in January, but I've known this team for a year and a half. Yeah, and Mikhail and I started talking about it like 4.5 months before I joined. So it's a longer. Like they wisely sort of countered my skepticism too in certain ways, right? Like leadership, this is the thing. Dreaming, that's what people want. Inspiration, it can sound kind of hokey.
Yeah.
But, after you kind of giggle and roll your eyes, you have, the rest of your life to figure that out, right? So what? The cynicism is 20 seconds long. What's next? What's after cynicism? What do you got? And that's an important thing to ask. I don't know if I'm a big Conan O'Brien fan, and I remember when his last Tonight Show, remember like the Jay Leno fiasco?
Yeah.
And it was that same year. It was 2010. It was like when I was graduating college. And he said, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but in his like goodbye address, and this is Conan, right? Like the king of silly. Yeah. He's never that sober about stuff. And he said, just don't be cynical. Like he said look at what he got to do. He said, even though this wasn't everything I got, and even though I kind of got, pushed out of this job, I got to host the Tonight Show for 10 months. Yeah. Don't be cynical. And that's the thing that this is encouraging me to think again, You know, don't be cynical. Like we are, to paraphrase what Jim, our chairman, often says, isn't this an incredible time to lead? Aren't we lucky that now is the time we can lead? That's the way to look at it, you know, instead of to be scared or depressed or thrown off by the chaos in the world. Isn't this an opportunity to build from this chaos? And then maybe a third thing I'd add, in addition to the difference between the problem and the dream and sort of innovation for innovation's sake versus innovative leadership. A third thing I'd add to that trend, and it's sort of a new thought, is that the goal in a very chaotic digital world is to build from abundance, not scarcity, right? Like we say that, but we don't internalize that. And I think so much of the problem we have is we don't actually know how to do it yet. So we do need a new methodology to figure that out. There's more information than ever before. There's more money than ever before. Yeah. It does cost less to do things than it ever did before. We are looking at a new world order, whatever that might mean, and it is scary. You know, the very basic social concepts are changing. If you've been following sort of the year of funny money between GameStop and Stonks and the rise of NFT, it seems like the financial system itself is changing upon itself. Yeah. So it's an important time to build from abundance, to like look at all this and make something from it, not to panic, put the genie back in the bottle, and kind of hope for the best. And I think from our politics to our media, like that's the I think that's the conflict. You know what I mean? Like that's why you're getting populists, and that's why you're seeing sort of weird backlashes to things that no one even knew about 6 months ago. Yeah, it's because I think there's a lot of attempts to put genies back in bottles, and that's never worked ever, and it won't work now.
No, and I love that you know, as we have been talking for the last hour, going through kind of the rise and fall of your career and things that you went through.
Rise and fall, Jesus! I hope hold and fall.
Well, what I mean by that is that there's up times and down times, right? Okay, and that
the life and death of Matt Hooper. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, in that downtime of everything kind of weighing on you, opportunities sprung in a different way for you to rekindle passion around this idea of dreams and innovation leadership, and how you have a chance to make a difference in your sphere of influence and hopefully and beyond with the work that you get to now do, and how different stages of our lives, different stages of your career has prepared you for where you get to go next. And that is an exciting thing, right? And so that's why this has been a lot of fun to kind of listen and kind of build up to this piece. And the last question I really have for you as we round this out is, as we look at 2022 and the work that you get to do and some of the things and projects you kind of have bubbling up, what are you most excited about in 2022? And again, we're recording this on a very tough day, but what are you most excited about in 2022 for the career of Matt Hooper and what you get, the work that you get to do?
I think there's three areas that are really important. And I think via writing and lecturing, working on a book, I'll have a new podcast coming out later this spring. I mean, I think that the platforms are not necessarily that different in terms of how I get the information out. Mm-hmm. But the team I'm now working with at Idonea, love the team. I think that's a big, I'm wildly excited about that.
Yeah.
And then I think the three areas, as I mentioned a moment ago, that I'm very keen on are how do you preserve liberal democracy around the world, and what kind of leadership and what kinds of innovations are required there? Mm-hmm. What does real climate innovation look like, such that it's more than a sustainability strategy or greenwashing your logo?
Yeah.
And then I think the conversation where diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a nice to have, but an essential to have, like the baseline for trust in an institution, that is still too often overlooked, despite the incredible outpouring of support for social justice issues, for racial justice and gender justice issues over the last couple of years. You know, it's still not enough. It's not enough to post to Instagram, sort of show temporary solidarity, especially not when people don't give up their board seats, or, much of the Fortune 50 is still white men, and all that, all of the statistics we know about. The amount of venture capital invested in founders of color and female founders still incredibly low.
Yeah.
So I'd say that those three issues are really important, and they're kind of weaving its way through there. I think there's really interesting stuff like ethical AI. It's very much tied to farming, is like the rise of alternative meat. I mean, I think there's like cool trends that innovators should be looking at. But to me, it's like great team, making sure that people still have the ability to hold free and fair elections anywhere in the world, that we still have a planet worth preserving, and that more people have more access to more opportunities.
Yeah.
That's what I'm most excited to do this year.
And those are some big things and amazing things that you have grown into and worked into, and you have an opportunity, a space, and a place for you to go make that happen. So I'm excited to see where that takes you, what that looks like. I definitely feel like in about 6 to 8 months, as you get your feet wet and start doing some of these things, have you back on to kind of update on, see where that is, and talk more about what that means.
And this first summit, Rob, is going to be virtual. So if all of your listeners, we can maybe offer some kind of early access. We'd love, we have wonderful speakers from all around the world, world leaders, from the public and private sector.
Yeah.
Folks who have experimented with the first successful guaranteed income in their cities. Folks leading diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives on Wall Street against real social pressure. We have some really brave folks coming to this summit, and I'd love to be able to share that content with your listeners. And then, to your point, sort of beyond the summit, I just want to maybe leave listeners with this, like, because this is all sounded sort of nonlinear, and I feel like to the end here, it almost sounded like I was just listing op-ed topics or something. The risk with any conversation on innovation is that it becomes abstracted.
Mm-hmm.
So I recommend everyone check out Live from Tomorrow because I loved making it. I recommend everyone go and check out Dreams and Details because I love teaching it. It's a great book. But what those really are like outlets and sort of pieces of content, for lack of a better phrase, that ground these ideas in something and make these things tangible. And that's what your podcast does for the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
And I maybe to bring this completely full circle, we talked a lot about maybe there's fear in a nonlinear path. Don't be afraid. The world is changing so quickly, and whatever you thought was going to happen won't. Whatever you kind of expect is going to happen probably won't either. Whatever happened to your parents certainly isn't going to happen to us.
Yeah.
And so it's worth taking the risks that you can literally afford to take. Don't do something that destroys you. But if there's an opportunity to take a risk and it won't kill you, and they rarely will, worthwhile risks, just so you know, take it. I mean, really, what the heck? I mean, we've after these last 2 years, like, isn't this time? Yeah. So that would maybe what I would leave some listeners.
I love it, and I appreciate that, and I agree wholeheartedly. Lean into that. Be a part of. If something does scare you a little bit, it's probably the right door to be going down, and lean into that and learn from it and make that happen. And yes, we'll definitely post the information on the summit in the show notes. Would love to work with you on something to maybe get an access code that I could share with Bear Nation.
For sure, Bear Nation, we'd love to have you. You are a good nation of bears.
Well, we'd love that, and it's been an amazing ride building this podcast for the last 6 months. We've had listeners in 49 countries right now, and continuing to grow as we continue to build this. So we'd love to share that. And I think the final thing is, as we leave on that point, is how can Bear Nation stay attuned to Matt Hooper, and how can they find you and get involved in further the conversation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say stay up to date on the updates from Idonia. So you can go to idonia.us or dreamsanddetails.com. Both URLs will take you there, and you could sign up for the newsletter, check out what's happening there. Those are future updates. And then maybe by the time this posts in the show notes, we'll have updates about our new podcast and other relevant information for the summit. And then, my hope is that by like mid-March, the summit information will also come out on our LinkedIn page. So I'd also recommend following Idonia on LinkedIn.
Awesome. I'll make sure to link all those in the show notes so you can easily grab that and stay involved. And definitely, if you haven't, follow Matt and his journey, check him out on LinkedIn as well. I'm excited. I appreciate you being here. I had an immense amount of pleasure getting to talk through a lot of different topics with you and kind of bring home this idea of how we ground innovation and what innovative leadership could look like, and all the work that you get to do and things that you get to experience. And that I really hope that you get to continue to make the changes that you want to make in the wider globe, and excited to be a part of that and supporting you in any way, shape, or form. So Matt, thank you so much for today. I appreciate having you on.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody. This was just an absolute treat. Thank you so much.
All right, Bear Nation. Once again, thank you so much. Until the next episode, stay well and rise up. Bear Nation, once again, thank you for tuning in and listening to the Bear Necessities podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review. It really does help and means a lot to us, the show. And I want to thank our friends over at Fin. Fin is a social good platform that creates employee engagement and builds culture. It's our mission to support and give back to the communities that we serve around the world. And we do this by giving every guest on our show a $10 donation to the cause of their choosing using the Fin platform. Until next time, thank y'all, stay well, and rise up. If you hadn't already heard about it, or you don't already know, my new book, The Social Soul, How to Master Your Personal and Professional Brand with Intentionality and Authenticity, is out now. You can find it on Barnes & Noble or Amazon. Go check it out, purchase a copy, let me know what you think, leave me a review. I appreciate y'all for the support. Can't wait to hear from you what stood out the most.